There are moments when even the strongest hearts break, and even the toughest men can't hold back their tears. For Can Yaman, that moment came when he heard the words Demet Özdemir finally dared to speak. The man known for his strength, his confidence, his untouchable image in the media, suddenly he was just a man, broken by the voice of the woman he once loved. Can Yaman's tears fell when he heard Demet's words, read the headlines, and with those words, the entire world stopped to ask, what did she say that touched him so deeply? Their story has always been one of fire and silence, passion and heartbreak. From the first time they met on the set of Can Yaman, fans saw a connection that could not be faked. Every look, every touch, every smile between them carried an electricity that made people believe in love again. For years, viewers speculated that what they witnessed on screen was more than acting, that it was real. And for a while, perhaps it was. But behind the scenes, their journey was complicated. Fame, pressure, jealousy, distance, everything that comes with being two of the most admired stars in Turkey and beyond. And when their relationship reached its breaking point, it wasn't loud arguments or dramatic scandals that tore them apart. It was silence. Silence that spoke louder than words. Silence that left scars both of them carried long after the camera stopped rolling. And now, after years of unanswered questions, Demet has finally spoken. Her words were not full of anger. They weren't accusations or bitterness. Instead, they were quiet, vulnerable, and painfully honest. I waited for him to fight for me, she admitted. But the fight never came. And in that silence, I realized I had to let go. Those words, so simple and so raw, were enough to bring Ken to tears. Friends close to him say he listened in silence as her interview played, his eyes glassy, his jaw tight, until finally, the tears rolled down his face. For a man who has built his public image on strength, discipline, and control, those tears revealed the truth he has tried so hard to hide, that Demet's absence still hurts, that her words still cut straight into his heart. For Demet, speaking her truth was about closure. For Can, hearing it was about regret. The tears he shed were not just about what she said, they were about everything left unsaid between them. The promises never spoken, the apologies never given, the love that was never fully admitted. Fans around the world reacted instantly. Clips of Demet's confession spread across social media, often edited alongside footage of Can wiping his eyes in past interviews or looking away when her name was mentioned. He still loves her, some wrote. Her words broke him, others added. Hashtags of their names trended once again, proof that their story continues to live on in the hearts of millions. But perhaps what struck people most was the humanity of it all. Can Yaman, the man often portrayed as unshakable, was reduced to tears by the words of a woman he once called his partner. And Demet, so often guarded, finally opened her heart enough to let the world see her pain. Together, they reminded everyone that behind the fame and the headlines, they are just two people who once loved deeply, and who are still haunted by what was lost. The image of Can Yaman with tears in his eyes spread like wildfire. Fans who had followed his career for years could hardly believe it. Can, the man known for his strength, his discipline, his unstoppable energy, was suddenly vulnerable. But those who know him best say they were not surprised. Because if there is one person in the world who could break through his armor, it was always Demet Özdemir. When Demet spoke those words, I waited for him to fight for me, but the fight never came. It was as though she held up a mirror to the past he had tried so hard to bury. It wasn't just a confession. It was a wound being reopened. A reminder that for all the fame, all the achievements, all the walls he built around himself, he could not erase the night he chose silence over truth. Insiders recall that the moment Demet's words reached him, Can excused himself from the company he was with. He needed to be alone. For hours, he sat in silence, replaying her voice in his mind, her face in his memory. And then, the tears came. Not in a dramatic outburst, but in the quiet way that heartbreak always does, slowly, painfully, uncontrollably. He didn't want anyone to see him cry, a source close to him revealed. But that night, he couldn't hold it in. Demet's words cut deeper than anything he's heard before, because deep down, he knows they're true. For Can, those tears were not just about the past, they were about regret. Regret for the words he never said. Regret for the nights he stayed silent. Regret for letting pride and fear stand in the way of love. He had built his image on being untouchable, but Demet's voice shattered that illusion in seconds. Meanwhile, Demet's confession was not meant to wound him. Her intention was not revenge or blame. It was honesty. "I didn't want to hurt him," she later clarified. "I just wanted to tell my truth. To explain why I walked away. People think I was cold, but the truth is I waited. I waited for him to show me I mattered. And when he didn't, I had to save myself." Her honesty, however, was exactly what broke him. Because in her words, he heard the reflection of his own choices. And when he realized that his silence had cost him the woman who once loved him more than anything, the weight of that truth was too heavy to carry without tears. Fans flooded social media with sympathy for both of them. Some wrote, "Demet deserved better, but Can's tears prove he never stopped caring." Others added, "It's tragic, two people who clearly loved each other, but pride and silence destroyed them." The public, who had followed their love story like a fairy tale, were now witnessing the painful ending in real time. And yet, those tears also gave fans hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, Can's vulnerability meant he was finally ready to face the truth. That maybe the silence between them could still be broken. That maybe love, even after so much time, could find its way back. But for Demet, the chapter is different. Her words were not an invitation to start over. They were a declaration that she had survived. "Sometimes," she said, "we don't get the ending we dreamed of. But we still have to write our own story. And that's what I did." Her strength lies in the fact that she no longer needs Can's words. She found closure in her own. As Can wiped away his tears that night, he was forced to confront the one truth he had tried to escape for years, that silence has consequences. He had always been the man who could walk away from rumors, who could ignore gossip, who could protect himself by simply refusing to speak. But when it came to Demet, silence wasn't strength. It was weakness. It was the very thing that destroyed what they had. For years, fans had speculated about the real reason behind their sudden distance. Some said it was jealousy, others blamed their careers, a few even whispered about betrayal. But Demet's confession made it painfully clear, it wasn't scandal that ended them, it was silence. A silence that grew louder with every unanswered call, every unspoken word, every night where one waited and the other turned away. And now, seeing Demet speak with such raw honesty, Can could no longer hide from the truth. Her words broke him because they were real, a close friend revealed. He always thought maybe she exaggerated, maybe she'd moved on. But hearing her admit she waited for him, and he wasn't there, it crushed him. The image of Can Yaman crying over Demet's words spread quickly online, and with it came endless debates. Was this proof that he still loved her? That deep down, he regretted everything? Or were his tears simply the guilt of knowing he had hurt someone he once called his closest confidant? For Demet, however, the weight was different. Her truth was never about making him cry, it was about freeing herself from the silence she had carried for so long. "People think closure comes from someone else," she said softly. "But sometimes, closure is the moment you finally say what you've been holding inside. That's what I did. I freed myself." Still, fans couldn't help but notice how intertwined their stories remain. Every headline about Demet seems to carry Can's name beside it. Every photo of Can sparks questions about Demet. They may have chosen separate paths, but in the eyes of the world, their destinies remain bound together. And maybe that's what makes his tears so haunting. Because it wasn't just about Demet's words, it was about everything those words represented. The love they shared, the chances they missed, the future they never had. His tears were not just for her, they were for himself, for the man he once was, for the life he let slip away in silence. Insiders say that even after the interview ended, Can couldn't bring himself to speak. He stayed quiet for hours, replaying her voice in his head, remembering her smile, her laughter, the way she used to look at him. And with every memory came another tear. For the first time, perhaps, he realized that fame, success, and image meant nothing compared to the one thing he lost, and could never get back. Fans around the world reacted with heartbreak of their own. "He still loves her," some declared. "Those tears are proof." Others were harsher. "Too late, Can. You had your chance. You chose silence. And now you cry for what you destroyed." The divide in opinion only fueled the storm, making their story once again the most talked about love saga in Turkish entertainment. And while Demet carried herself with grace, refusing to attack him, her truth was final. She no longer needed his words, his apologies, or even his tears. She had given him her love once, and when he answered with silence, she chose herself instead. That strength is what fans admire most about her today. The world has seen Can Yaman at his strongest, confident, unstoppable, a man who seemed to have everything. But the world has now also seen him at his most human, in tears, broken by the words of the woman he once loved. "I waited for him to fight for me, but the fight never came," Demet had said. And those words, simple yet devastating, pierced through his defenses like nothing else ever could. For Can, those tears were more than emotion. They were confession. Confession of love lost. Confession of regret. Confession of a man who realized too late that silence had cost him everything. Friends close to him reveal that since Demet's statement, Can has become more withdrawn. He speaks less in interviews, smiles less on red carpets, and though he continues his work with professionalism, those who know him say his eyes betray him. "He carries her words with him everywhere," one insider said. "You can see it in the way he looks down sometimes, as if replaying them over and over." Demet, on the other hand, has shown the strength of someone who has survived heartbreak and turned it into resilience. Her voice may have trembled as she shared her truth, but it was steady enough to close a chapter she once thought would never end. "I don't regret loving him," she admitted. "I regret waiting for words that never came. But now, I'm free." Her freedom, however, is Can's prison. Because while she has moved forward, he remains tethered to the past. His tears are not just about her words. They are about everything he cannot change. And that is the cruel irony of their story, that one woman's closure became one man's regret. For fans, their story has once again become a symbol of love's fragility. It shows how two people who once seemed destined for forever could be undone not by betrayal or distance, but by silence. A silence that still echoes years later, in interviews, in headlines, in the tears that Can could not hide. Social media continues to buzz with theories and emotions. Some fans believe his tears mean there is still hope, that maybe one day Can will finally say the words he never did. Others argue it's too late, that Demet has moved on, and that no amount of regret can undo the silence that broke her heart. But one thing is certain, their love story is far from forgotten. Every photo of them together resurfaces. Every interview is dissected. Every word they say, or don't say, is measured against the history they share. They may try to live separate lives, but the world refuses to let go of the bond they once had. And perhaps neither of them can truly let go either. Because in every tear Can sheds, in every trembling word Demet speaks, there is proof that what they shared was real. Real enough to haunt them, real enough to break them, and real enough to live on long after the love itself ended. Her final words in that interview still echo, "Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. But I wish, just once, he had spoken." Because even the harshest truth is easier than waiting for a fight that never came. Those words didn't just break Can, they broke millions of hearts around the world. Because everyone who has ever waited for someone to fight for them knows the pain of being met with silence. And everyone who has ever let pride or fear stop them knows the regret that follows. In the end, Can Yaman's tears fell when he heard Demet's words isn't just a headline. It is the truth of their story. A story of love, silence, heartbreak, and regret. A story that continues to remind the world that words left unsaid can echo louder than any fight, any promise, any goodbye. Demet has spoken. Can has cried. And the world will never forget the night her words finally broke his silence.